Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Appreciate you guys being patient with me. I know I'm a little bit behind today and a busy morning of some awesome client sessions. So I'm excited to take a little break from in-person sessions and jump on here with you guys live today as we continue our Learn with Lo webinar series. We've been trucking our way through this hormone hierarchy. It's definitely a graphic and a tool that I go back to a lot with all of my current clients just to explain the proper order of operations in how we really get to the root cause of a lot of hormonal imbalance symptoms and make sure that we're not just throwing in, or like I said on my stories yesterday, we're not just sprinkling in random supplements or random prescriptions or random diet strategies that don't really address how the body is built in a proper order of operations, right? And a lot of times too, when individuals come in with a laundry list of different symptoms that kind of seem unrelated, or they've seen a bunch of different specialists for a lot of these different symptoms, they can get very, very easily overwhelmed of trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, like how do I tackle these? Well, what do I work on first? And it helps us really have a conversation of how all of those symptoms really come together as everybody is one unit. We have one hormone hierarchy, one system. What's happening in one system is definitely being felt and compensated for by another system. So chances are symptoms are really just kind of popping up because of how the body is compensating from a bottom up perspective, right? So I got an opportunity to really chat about this hormone hierarchy. I showed another picture of the hormone hierarchy on my stories yesterday, and hopefully you guys are again kind of following along as I start to give you some of the big picture approach so that we can get more and more detailed every single week and dig into the science and dig into the what and the why and the when and the who behind really bringing some fixes to this overlying scenario. So as we tackled today, we really talked last week about this HPA axis, right? And the HPA axis stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, essentially just a fancy way of saying how is our brain communicating to our adrenal glands, knowing that our adrenal health is the foundation of our overall hormone hierarchy. You don't get anywhere without addressing adrenals first. From gut health issues to thyroid imbalances to sex hormone imbalances, symptoms of transitioning from perimenopause to menopause, infertility issues, you name it. We have do not pass go, do not collect $200. We have to address adrenals first. So this HPA axis dysregulation used to be called something that we term adrenal fatigue. We now know in the traditional and the functional medicine space that adrenals don't actually ever fatigue out, so it's not really a proper term, but we do know that that HPA axis does get dysregulated because the body stops responding the way that it normally should. So heightened periods of chronic stress then can drive us into periods of low stress, right? And all of the different body systems are felt in this, right? We have widespread endocrine dysfunction when the adrenals are hurting, whether that's gut symptoms, sex hormone symptoms, thyroid symptoms, generalized inflammation, mood disorders, talking about big swings of anxiety and depression. That is all adrenal axis dysfunction. So we really laid the scene for these adrenals and wanted to then even last week give you guys some more in-depth testing of the adrenals. What do we look at? What are some different lab markers that will give us a really good idea of how well or not well these adrenals are functioning? And then we can kind of go from there. So this week, I really wanted to take that adrenal, take the foundation of that hormone health and start to even dig deeper into some tangible, controllable takeaways that I work on with a lot of my clients when it comes to tackling this adrenal health first. And one of the biggest things that I always like to talk about is de-stressing your diet. Yes, most people's diet is probably one of the most common and frequent sources of controllable internal metabolic stress. It just is what it is. And I think it's one of those things that we do not properly recognize, and we definitely don't properly respect the impact that our diet is probably having on our overall adrenals. I heard a quote recently, which I really, really love, and it was talking about the concept that when it comes to overall metabolic health, your diet is either the culprit or the cure. And I just love that quote, and I thought how fitting that a lot of times we don't put a lot of emphasis on making sure that our diet strategy isn't actually causing stress. Even if we think it's a healthy habit, or we think it's, a diet strategy that we're trying with good intentions to either, lose weight or control body composition, our body does not care about that, right? Our body only cares about one thing and one thing only, and that is the status of energy and survival. And it will do whatever it takes to compensate for that, even if we feel like we're doing good things for our body. If our body deems that habit as something that is stressful, it is compensating for, and every system is eventually going to feel the downstream effects of that, right? So what I wanted to really dive into today is really talking about this foundation of the hormone hierarchy as we talk about the adrenals, as we talk about HPA axis dysregulation. We cannot talk about it without addressing the diet. That was, again, something that I shared on my stories this last weekend, was a really awesome message that I got from one of my followers who was talking about all of the different posts and things that I was talking about, with the differences between high and low cortisol really resonating with her. And she was saying how ever since April of this last year, she definitely was symptomatic of high cortisol. She was working with a functional medicine doctor who had put her on a bunch of adrenal supportive supplements like selenium and zinc and vitamin C, and she was really happy with having that kind of like direction and diagnosis, but she wasn't really feeling any better. And that is such a common thing that I see, because you cannot out supplement adrenal health. It just isn't. That's not how it works. The foundation of our hormone hierarchy is built off of habit change, and it's built off of lifestyle change. It's that understanding and coming to the table and saying, hey, the way that I eat, the way that I move my body, the way that I sleep, that right there is going to be the foundation of my overall current metabolic health, the current state of my body composition, and the future determining factor of how my body tolerates stress and disease states going forward. And so that's something that I really want to reiterate. And I tell people that all the time. Like, I am in a field of creating habit and lifestyle change. I am not a quick fix. I will never claim to be a quick fix, because I'm the person that people come to when all their quick fixes don't work anymore. So I would rather help you do it in the right order of operations and just start to come to terms with, what does the role of diet and lifestyle have on the foundation of our entire hormone health? So it was a great opportunity getting this message about someone diving into really looking at their adrenal health, but again, looking at their adrenal health and getting handed quick fixes. Here's some supplements. It's not how it works, right? The very first step that she should have been handed is, hey, we have some signs and symptoms of high cortisol. That is telling us that your body is under a chronic state of perceived stress. And then our job as practitioners is, let's go hunting. Let's go find it. Why is your body feeling stressed? What are things that we're doing multiple times a day, every day, that your body sees as a stress, even if we don't perceive it that way, right? So the very first tools that she should have been handed is information on how should she be de-stressing your diet. Everybody has to eat multiple times a day, every day, for the rest of your life. Might as well learn how to do it right. That's how I always say. So when we think about supporting and eating in a way that actually maximizes adrenal health, maximizes that overall HPA axis dysregulation, it's gotta be something that your body sees as safety and fuel and security. And all of that is going to go back to this nice lumped up magic term that we call blood sugar balance. The best thing that you can do for your adrenals from a controllable aspect is making sure that we are fueling our body in a way that supports overall blood sugar balance. Now, the hard part is one, we usually don't even hear about this concept of blood sugar until you are an overt pre-diabetic or diabetic, when in reality, most of us are living with blood sugar imbalance issues for about a decade before you're actually ever diagnosed as pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic. So it's probably one of the most preventable and controllable pieces of information that we can equip ourselves with, is how we manage this naturally through what we eat, when we eat, how we eat, what we don't eat enough of, all of those types of things. So number one is we don't hear, and there's not enough education about eating in a way that manages blood sugar balance as a proactive or a preventative means. And number two, most, if not all, of diet culture's fad diet attempts are the most anti-blood sugar balance pieces of information that I've probably ever seen. So everything that we tend to turn to when it comes to looking for the best nutrition or diet strategies, when we go to standard diet culture and all the different fads and trends, most of them are making people's blood sugar imbalances worse. So that brings us to our conversation for today. If we want to de-stress our diet, I want you guys to be able to be more educated connoisseurs out into the world of understanding what are those habits that are wrecking my hormones? What are those diet habits that are contributing to HPA axis dysregulation? And if they're contributing to HPA axis dysregulation and they're wrecking my hormones, then they sure as heck are also sabotaging my weight loss goals. So thinking about the top 5 habits that are wrecking our hormones and sabotaging our weight loss goals, let's really dive in. So number 1 is going to be macronutrient deficiencies. When I say the word macronutrient, it's really just a fancy way of saying protein, fiber, fat. Protein, fiber, fat. Protein, fiber, fat. These are the different constituents, major constituents of our food that our body uses for essential energy production, building blocks, hormones, enzymes, energy production, all of that fancy stuff, right? So when we say macronutrient deficiencies, that usually means that we have not enough protein in the diet. We have not enough fiber in the diet, or we have not enough fats in the diet, or not the right balance or not the right type of these major macronutrients. So it goes back to thinking about, look at all of this like plant-based, vegan, vegetarian initiative that's being pushed. If you're not careful adopting a lifestyle like that, like I said, while healthy for some individuals and in some aspects, that can be something that is an absolute hit to your adrenals, as if you are following a low protein diet. That's not going to be conducive to overall HPA axis dysregulation. Not to mention, like, look at all of the low carb and keto craze out there too. Carbs are your most dense source of fiber. So a lot of times we don't think about the fact that when we sign up for a low carb, or specifically a no carb diet, like the keto carnivore, where we're swearing off all sources of carbohydrates, we also have to realize if you're following a no carb diet, you're also signing up for a no fiber diet. So a lot of times when I say that out loud, most people are like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound healthy, but I thought keto was healthy, but I don't think low fiber is healthy. Yep, you got to weigh your pros and cons there, right? Same thing with like a low fat diet. There are still a lot of individuals out there following kind of that whole like lower calorie is better. And let's be real, fats are more calorie dense. So there's a lot of people out there that are, if they're not just straight up eating enough calories, they're probably under fueling fats or under fueling the right types of fats, especially if they eat more foods that are processed and packaged, tend to have more of your plant oils in them, the canola oils, the soybean oils, all of those types of things. So number one biggest kind of blood sugar blunder out there is diet trends that are exacerbating or creating macronutrient deficiencies, whether that's proteins, fibers, or fats, right? Number two biggest habit that's wrecking people's hormones is micronutrient deficiencies, right? So macronutrients being more protein, fiber, fat, micronutrients being your vitamins and your minerals, right? So these are things that, again, we cannot out supplement a poor diet. You should be getting 95% of what your body needs, vitamins and minerals, through a food first approach. So I would say a lot of times the biggest things that we see with the micronutrient deficiencies is just the lack of diversity in like the standard American diet, right? Even think about color diversity. That's a big one. I know it sounds kindergarten status, but thinking color diversity as it applies to your plate, the standard American diet is mostly white, yellow, brown. Even just think about like a typical fast food breakfast meal that you would open. It's like, oh, it's a breakfast sandwich with a side of hash browns. And it's like, the bun is white, the cheese is yellow, the sausage patty is brown, and the hash brown is like a brownish. Like the whole meal is monochromatic, right? So a standard American diet lacks a tremendous amount of micronutrient, like vitamin and mineral, just because of lack of color diversity as well. So we have to think, like I said, big picture micronutrient or macronutrient deficiencies, but also micronutrient deficiencies from just lack of nutrient density or color diversity in the diet as well. Number three is going to be underfueling your basal metabolic rate and activity level. So this is more of the diet culture trends out there that are hopping people on very, very low calorie bandwagons. Usually it's the diets that are very prepackaged, like you're doing most of your foods or your meals are like powders or bars that are pre-portioned for you, or a very specific, like, here's your meal plan. And they're trying to purposely keep you under a set amount of calories per day, which usually end up being very, very low, like 800 to 1,000 to 1,200, even 1,500 calories a day. Most like typical 150-pound woman is rocking a basal metabolic rate just 15 to 1,600 calories a day. Meaning if you just open your eyes in the morning, your body wants 15 to 1,600 calories. Not to mention if we're an active individual, not to mention we have a job, we get out of bed, we enjoy exercise. Like, you cannot get everything that your body needs in 1,000 calories a day, eating one meal a day, skipping meals, or even just like eating in a 6-hour window. Like, we keep trying to like shrink this quantity conversation, and there's just no way. There's no way your metabolism is ever going to let that happen. It's going to adapt as long as it can until it just can't adapt anymore. And that's why you see people yo-yo in their weight so much and so drastically, like 30 pounds up, 30 pounds down. It's just so unhealthy. So we have to make sure that we are understanding that one of the main diet trends out there that is wrecking your hormones and sabotaging your weight loss goals is low calorie diets. You cannot be chronically underfueling your basal metabolic rate and activity factor. So I help individuals with that a lot, helping them realize like, hey, this is what it looks like to even just break even in a day. This is what it looks like to even just eat at your basal metabolic rate. And they're like, whoa, like that's insane. Like, so you're asking me to like eat more food. I'm like, yes, I am, right? And it can be a little bit trepidous to kind of think about tackling that on your own. If you come from a place of just thinking like calories and cardio, it can be hard to break into thinking more about building muscle and building metabolic flexibility, but that's really where the magic happens right there. So like I said, number one, we're going through, if you're just joining in, we're going through the 5 diet culture habits that are wrecking our hormones and sabotaging our weight loss goals. So we covered number 1, which is macronutrient deficiencies, protein, fiber, fat. We covered number 2, which is micronutrient deficiencies of just lack of color diversity and nutrient density of a standard American diet. Number 3 is the diet approaches out there that are really cutting back on quantity, whether that's really hypocaloric meal plans, doing everything through like shakes and powders and bars, doing things like skipping meals, intermittent fasting. Like you're only going to get so far just continuing to eat less. I always said that I feel like the laziest nutrition advice out there is fasting. I don't know why. I just have this and I'm not saying that, like I said, fasting is complete garbage, but I just think it's so funny because everybody out there is like, oh my gosh, imagine people coming to me and being like, Lauryn, what should I eat? When should I be eating? What is the magic tool? And you pay me thousands of dollars and then I turn around and I'm like, I have the magic for you. Don't eat. And it's like, that is the laziest coaching advice out there. I'm like, we're so on this fasting trend that I just can't. So don't get, like I said, stuck into the weeds of this underfueling or this calories conversation, because that ain't where it's at, right? That is wrecking your hormones and sabotaging your weight loss goals. Which leads us to our very last 2, which is more on the too much end versus deficiencies. We're talking more toxicities now. The other thing wrecking your hormones is, like I said, too much sugar, right? And I know that a lot of us are more attuned to looking for sugar-based sources, almost to the point now that food manufacturers know that we're looking for sugar, so they just replace real sugar with artificial sugars and fake fibers and start slapping keto labels on stuff or 0 net carbs. Meanwhile, you turn it over and the whole thing is full of artificial sugars and sugar alcohols and inulin and chicory root and all of these mystery ingredients, but we think it's healthy because it's 0 grams added sugar. It's yeah, but we've made people so scared of sugar that we just replace everything with artificial sweeteners that are 10,000 times sweeter than table sugar, and we expect that our pancreas doesn't recognize that. It does. It still secretes the same amount of insulin, if not more. So when I say too much sugar, sure, there is sugar that's hidden in pretty much anything that has a bag, a box, or a barcode has added sugar, even if it's a savory food. But also, when I say too much sugar, I am also lumping that into the category of too much artificial sugars too. So just being mindful of all of the different processed foods that we eat out of bags, boxes with barcodes on it, even if it's slapped a protein label or a net carbs label or a keto label, guarantee they found something in there to add some sugar components to. And number 5 is also, like I said, more on the toxicities end. And this is an obvious one, which is our diet culture really pushing or glorifying or normalizing too much caffeine or too much alcohol. Both of those act as stimulants and depressants on blood sugar, respectively. So caffeine will raise your blood sugar. Alcohol will lower your blood sugar. Regardless, it doesn't give us really great glycemic control. We get too big of swings high and too big of swings low. And we just use these things to not eat. We justify I count coffee as a meal. Coffee is not a meal. An energy drink does not make up for an afternoon snack, and we don't drink our calories instead of eating dinner. It just doesn't work that way. So we've created kind of this diet culture out there that I feel there's just so many underlying tones in there that if we're not careful, a lot of the different strategies that we're implementing, thinking it's a health promoting activity, actually are really, really big sources of stress. And if we don't de-stress our diet first and foremost, you're going to constantly be chasing your tail when it comes to managing your overall hormone hierarchy, overall metabolic health, and just overall long-term daily quality of life. So if we go back to anything and kind of bring it into an overarching theme, the theme of de-stressing your diet is eating in a way that promotes blood sugar balance. That is what it is. Now, there's two sides to the blood sugar balance equation. There's blood sugar highs, which of course we hear about and we think about, oh, type 2 diabetes, right? But we don't ever think about the blood sugar lows. And both of those big swings, like I said, those big extremes is what diet culture is unfortunately kind of glorifying and promoting right now, is either way too high or way too low, and not teaching you what does it really look like to live in this middle ground. What does it look like to eat in a blood sugar balancing way as a means of really bringing long-term health to our adrenals and calm this HPA axis dysregulation? So if you haven't thought about or taken the necessary steps to de-stress your diet first, that is step one. Then it will impact things like lifestyle, de-stressing your lifestyle too, de-stressing your sleep, and those will all be part of that foundation of the hormone hierarchy too. But the biggest thing that you want to tackle first is de-stressing that diet, because you're going to eat multiple times a day, every day for the rest of your life. So we might as well figure out how to do that correctly outside of just diet culture influences, good or bad. So again, if this is something that you haven't navigated on your own, or you're not sure how to navigate it, I don't blame you. There's not a ton of resources out there that are helping people de-stress their diet. There's just a lot of fad diet attempts out there that are making your hormones and your body more stressed in the long run. So if this is something you guys are interested in, obviously always head over to my profile. There's a link in my Instagram profile where you can access an application form to work with me one-on-one, if that's something you're interested in. Or again, I've been plugging and giving you guys teasers for my 3-month Revive, Restore, Renew You program that's going to be launching in January. It's going to be a 3-month intensive hormone balancing journey where we're going to dive into adrenal health, gut health, and thyroid health and detoxification, as well as just overall vitality and weight loss as well. So be on the lookout, because the early bird registration link will open on December 1st. And those of you that are part of the early bird registration will get discount codes that will be active for that when registration goes live in January. So super excited, like I said, to get you guys involved in more of my coaching options. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. If these types of webinars have been helpful for you, I would love if you guys could like them, save them, share them with your family and friends, just to get more and more people really invested in proactive aspects of their overall health. So excited to chat with you guys today. Be on the lookout for our Learn with Lo next Monday at noon. Have a happy Thanksgiving week.